All right. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning. And welcome to today's video. Before I get into it, I want to talk a little bit about some of the news that's been happening in the country since I last recorded, some of the other things that are going on, and also about an event I went to this morning. Also, as you can see, I voted in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Today is Constitution Day. And, yeah. So, anyway, let's go ahead and break this down. Before we get into it, likes, comments, subscriptions. They are always appreciated. I'm trying to do one video a week, typically on my off days from work. And I've set that, and I've talked to my boss, and he said it's cool. It's going to be Wednesdays, so from here on out, it's going to be on Wednesdays that I'm going to upload a video. I'll try to get a second one out someday during the weekend, if possible. Y'all will have that. And I may even start including some, life-type stuff. If I decide to ever go fishing, I may bring a camera with me, stuff like that. Just because sometimes the politics can get wearisome. Now, likes and comments, of course, please feed the algorithm and subscriptions. Subscribe. Come on, y'all. Let's reach 1,000 by the end of the year. And, by the way, Wednesday's topic is going to be the Virginia Commonwealth elections. So we're talking delegates, the Commonwealth Senate, so General Assembly is the name of our legislature, so we're talking General Assembly elections, Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor, and of course Governor, whom I actually got to today meet our gubernatorial, one of our gubernatorial candidates here in the Commonwealth, and that's Glenn Youngkin. I did actually get to meet him. I got him to promise to look up the pocket veto and abuse it if he gets in office. I'm a fan of Coolidge. I'm, of course, going to like the pocket veto. And, yeah, he was actually a very, very good person. Oh, my God. He was so kind, friendly, seemed interested in everything anyone had to say to him. And he actually had human reactions when people brought him a problem or something. Unlike McAuliffe, who seems to have problems when communicating with people. I saw somebody bring up something that Youngkin didn't quite agree with, and he handled it with grace and class, whereas McAuliffe decides to yell and shout and not give straight answers when he faces a tough question from a sheriff who's legitimately concerned for his community, and basically tell the sheriff, I don't care what you think. That's what McAuliffe does. And I'm sorry, but McAuliffe is a freaking idiot. And I'm sorry I'm ranting, but McAuliffe is the worst. And I watched some of the debate last night, and McAuliffe seems to have a problem understanding how numbers work. He also seems to have a problem with telling the truth. And the moment that really hit that one home for me, apart from the incident where in 2016 where he said 93 million people a day die due to gun violence in this country. McAuliffe, if that were true, in 4 days, the entire country would be dead. And, by the way, McAuliffe was asked that question again by the reporter, and he doubled down on that. That was in 2016. His understanding of numbers has not gotten any better. He said that if Youngkin were elected, 47,000 teachers in the Commonwealth would be fired. I don't know. I was like, do we even have 47,000 teachers? I don't know that information. So I looked it up. There are 82,000 teachers in Virginia. That would effectively mean that probably 7 in 10 or 8 in 10 public school teachers would be fired in the Commonwealth if Youngkin were in office. That doesn't even seem remotely reasonable. Like, if if he had said something like, 2 in 10 teachers would lose their job, I'd say, okay, that actually sounds like something that maybe he's put a little bit of research into. I think that number would be high, but I could at least see that being reasonable campaign fodder. But to say that almost, 5 of every 8 teachers in the Commonwealth would lose their job, that just sounds absurd. But the kicker was that McAuliffe said that in one county in particular, forget which one, or it was an independent city, he said that there would be 266 teachers that would lose their jobs. There's only 190 teachers in the county he was talking about. And I forget whether it was city of Radford or Tazewell or Bland County. It was one of the counties in this area. But yeah, in the one he was talking about, there's only 190. And he said that, I think it was like, it had to have been like 260 that he said would lose their jobs. I'm sorry, what? 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 I think McAuliffe has a problem either understanding numbers or he's legitimately going senile. Like, we say Joe Biden is senile, but McAuliffe might actually be senile. I think Biden just has a problem speaking. Anyway, enough of me getting a little bit frustrated. I also did get to meet my my local candidate for delegate in the 12th, but I'm going to talk more about that on Wednesday. Let's talk about redistricting now that we've actually got some proposed maps. And we're just going to go alphabetically and look at proposed maps for the various states. I believe, yes, perfect. So we're going to look at the preliminary plan to start with. Now, this was the preliminary plan for Colorado, and it was actually a decent plan. Like, it actually made some sense. The first was basically Denver. The 6th was Denver's south suburbs. The second would be Fort Collins and the north central region. Western burbs and exurbs would be the 7th, and that's of Denver, of course. And the 8th would be this little area, exurban, suburban area between Fort Collins and Denver. The 3rd, and then of course the 5th. So the 3rd would be the western portion of the state, and the 5th would be Colorado Springs area. And I think this was a very fair map. Democrats would be more than likely to keep 4 seats. And, the Republicans would have a chance to bring it even. Democrats complain saying, oh, we should have more seats than that in this state because we won by double-digit numbers and all that. Forgetting that it's kind of hard to give you that many seats without actively gerrymandering it. And Colorado has an independent commission. They're not going to actively gerrymander. So, personally, I think that was really silly. By the way, this is what the old map looked like. And, the new map, this proposal, I thought it wasn't my favorite. The first staff plan, which was an update of that with a little bit of figuring, they basically made 3 safe Democratic districts, 2 competitive districts, one with the Dem lean and one with a Republican lean, and then 2 pretty safe Republican districts, and then Colorado's third, which would be not unreasonably competitive. But there were some complaints that it split the state more north-south than east-west, which was traditional. So they revised that again, and we'll put up the second staff proposal, which makes 3 basically safe seats for the Republicans, though Colorado Springs might transcend that. 3 basically safe seats for the Democrats, and then 2 pretty competitive seats for the entire state. Of these, I actually really personally preferred the preliminary plan. Because the preliminary plan looked more like the current plan. And let me look at the second one. The only really consistent thing is that Denver, which is this, I guess it's city of Denver or the county of Denver. Denver at least remains its own district. It's just how you split up the suburbs and exurbs that really determine the rest of it. But as you can see, Colorado Springs area is just super, super Republican. The next... Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The next state we're going to talk about, and we're just going to briefly zoom by, is Idaho, because it's pretty dull, and there is not a ton of change between maps. And even if we do look at the second plan, it doesn't really change much. It just changes where the dividing line is. As you can see, there's a lot more people in this region than this region. And that, yeah. So we're going to move on and look at Indiana. And, yeah, the proposed map basically makes it a pretty safe 9-2 bet every single year. I don't even see a truly competitive district here. So, yeah. It's a pretty good bet. And also, I think they really did clean this map up, in my opinion. Because this map looked a little bit janky in a lot of ways. This map actually does look pretty clean and compact. This is the only district I'd probably smooth this out a little bit, but, you know, maybe smooth these 3 out a little bit. But I think it's perfectly reasonable. Like, this map looks a lot cleaner and a lot more geographic, and you could say, yeah, that map actually looks not gerrymandered, even though it is for people who understand the political geography. If we go to Iowa, they actually have a proposed map as well. Now, this one is probably not going to last. This is from the Independent Advisory Commission, which tried to create a competitive map that can go, 3-1. But the truth is, this area of Iowa, this corner is never going to go to a Democrat. There are certain areas that are never going to go to a Republican in Iowa. The problem is, Iowa is shifting significantly to the right, and we'll see if that trend actually does hold. But I could see it holding. But, I mean, I think this is not a very clean map, to be 100% honest. I think they could have done a little bit better. But we'll see how this changes based off of what the how things go in the future. But the current map is favorable to the Republicans to an extent, but if I remember correctly, this one was actually drawn by the commission and accepted by the legislature. The proposed map actually draws a Democratic district, but we'll see how long that stands. Now, today I just got home. I didn't even see how the map would go, but both parties have drawn a map, and both have one Democratic and one pretty consistent Republican district. The current and the Democrats' plan doesn't really change all that much. It just shrinks the size of the first district a little bit. Kind of does a little bit of a really silly, janky thing, but as you can see, it's actually showing that if you look at the partisan balance, the old map, R plus 11, D plus 18, R plus 11, D plus 16, kind of shows that Maine is shifting a little bit to the right, but there is one drawn by the Republicans. Oh, wait, that was a Republican? Whoopsies. So let's look at what the Democrats' plan was, which kind of shifts a few things around in a few ways that are a little bit strange, but it's really between Lewiston and Bangor. I'm actually very impressed because it seems to be showing that both parties understand the geography of the state. So, yeah, they're just going to have to reconcile a few different things, and hey, guess what? You got a pretty good I'm proud that both parties are actually proposing something pretty darned close. Now, in Maryland, Governor Hogan has produced an independent commission, though the state legislature is going to completely ignore it and probably produce something that is even worse than the current map. I'll show you what I mean. This is the proposal. It cleans up the district boundaries. Doesn't go insane with like putting this section of Maryland with part of the Eastern Shore and Peninsula. Like I've seen some people suggesting that Maryland's Democrats should do to try and draw out Anthony Harris. Now, it does create 2 safe Republican seats and 6 safe Democratic seats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And I actually like this map. It keeps it very regional and geographic. And it actually more fairly represents the state because, let's be honest here, this part of Maryland should absolutely have a Republican. As you can see, there's enough people there to form a district. Whereas in the current map, which Democrats are going to absolutely try to make, they stretch the Eastern Shore district all the way over to here. They put this district, instead of going up here to cover up the rest of the northern section of the state, what they do is they drag it almost to D.C., and then you get to some of the ugliest districts I've ever seen. Maryland's 4th is real bad. Maryland's 8th is not particularly good either. Maryland's 3rd is just heinous. Stretches from Baltimore to Annapolis, and this one isn't too nice either. And then, of course, whatever this abomination is. Like, this is just... this is a heinous, heinous, heinous map. And yet, I think Maryland Democrats are going to make it even worse. This is far superior, and if you're in Maryland, try and petition the legislature to do this. Seriously. You deserve a better map than you're getting. Nebraska, a state where I actually expected the Republicans to try and draw out Omaha, have somehow kept it reasonably competitive. They've done a little bit to try and make the Omaha district redder, but as you can see, it's still darned competitive. And this is just one proposal. There is another proposal. I think this is the Democratic plan, which keeps the map very similar to the current map. But again, this is both parties, to an extent, the Republicans are trying to gerrymander, but to an extent, this is both parties saying, hey, look, this is the way we've had it. We're not going to try and change the process, change the state dramatically, So I kind of respect that the Republicans aren't trying to force out any competitive seats in the state. Now we move on to New York, a similar situation to Iowa, but with a different, party in control of the state. And New York's Independent Redistricting Commission is an advisory commission. And I wish I could zoom in on this one. Creates 2 safe Republican districts, a few competitive districts that are controlled by Republicans, 4 in the New York City metro area, and 1 this is insane that it also includes, 2, 3, 4 New York City metro area districts, which is just ridiculous. Creates another district over here. Creates another competitive district. This is one where the Republicans could feasibly have a sizable delegation from New York, which you would think Democrats would be like, hey, it may moderate the Republican Party to do that. No, they want to wipe them all out. And they're probably going to do that. I may draw a map of how they might be able to feasibly do that. And one of the first things they're probably going to do is they're going to try and make it so Staten Island is not in a red district. If we look at the old map, actually New York City is a little bit different in that map. As you can see, upstate and western New York have lost people. That said, the proposed map kind of gets rid of some competitive areas. So I think they could slightly change that. There is, of course, a second plan. I believe that was the names plan, the letters draft plan. A little bit different, but it still manages 1, 2, 3, 4 competitive but leaning Republican districts in the New York City metro area. Kind of keeps up the moving it slightly more, but it does some weird things like creating a Democratic district just in the middle of western New York, which I think is just a little bit wacky. But okay. but it also shows that upstate is no longer a Democratic stronghold. By the way, upstate is not everything outside of the New York City metro area. No, upstate is really from about this edge of Lake Erie through Albany. At least my understanding. And then, of course, the New York City metro goes to like here. And then Western New York is everything to the west of really this area, to the west of this area. New York City suburbs and exurbs are the rest of it, right? All right. So I'm not sure how I feel about the proposed maps for New York. One of them, I think they're decent maps. I guarantee you neither of them are going to last. Now, the last one we have is Oregon. And we're going to start off with the Republican draft plan, which I think is a bit greedy. Now, Oregon Democrats may just throw their hands up in frustration and say, no, you know that power sharing agreement we had, you won't come to the table with us. We're going to decide to wipe you all out or make this a safe 5-1 map. I hope they don't do that. Republicans should probably have 2 districts in this map. You can maybe draw it 2 to 3 with 1 competitive, okay? Now, this is the Republican plan. It creates a lot of very competitive seats, allowing in a very good year the Republicans have a 4-2 majority. But one thing I do like about the Republican plan is that it puts all of Portland into 1 district, which I think is the right thing to do, because Portland's about the size of a congressional district. And if you're following the laws that Oregon has, where you have to keep communities of interest together, such as cities, that actually makes some sense. And it even puts I think they've drawn this district, the 1st district, in a bad location. What they should do is set it some of these suburbs and then some of these suburbs over here, because that's a little bit more in keeping with how they should be doing it. But okay, fair enough. And their 6th, which would be new, is kind of the other suburbs and exurbs, but the one thing I don't like is that it does split Salem up. I think there's a better way to do that. And then Eugene gets thrown in with this and the rest of the coastal area. The 2nd just stays super red because it's the Cascades and Eastern Oregon, which is very, very rural and very, very Republican leaning. And then if we look at the Democratic proposal, creates 5 sort of competitive but not really districts. 3 competitive but sort of but not really districts. It splits Portland into 2 districts in order to grab suburbs and exurbs from both and ensure that. And then, of course, it splits Salem as well. And it takes all of the red area and throws it into the 2nd, which I think is the wrong way to do it. I think by splitting Portland and Eugene, and Salem like they did, I genuinely think that the Republicans would have a very good case to sue in state court, and argue that it's a blatant, not just partisan gerrymander, but against the state's own redistricting laws, saying that you can't split up communities of interest, which has clearly been done in the case of Portland and Salem. If we go back to the Republican map, Republicans actually look like they tried to follow it. I mean, Salem could probably be in its own district with some of the Portland suburbs, but maybe you should move a little bit more into those burbs, maybe rearrange a few things, and honestly, the Republican plan looks a lot cleaner and a lot better for Oregon. Much more geographically oriented. I would honestly prefer this map over the Democratic one, not for political reasons, but because I actually think this is just a better drawn map. And shows a better understanding of geography as well as Oregon's own redistricting laws. Is it perfect? No. I'd probably include another Democratic district to make the representation fair. And by Democratic district, I mean more likely Democrat district. But that's going to be it for today. Stay tuned Wednesday, where hopefully I'll be able to record and talk about Virginia's elections that are coming up and have actually technically started. Like, as I said, I've already voted, so. Take it easy, y'all. Have a very, very nice day. I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.